Good morning, friends, and welcome to the Legend Fiction Show. I'm your host, Dominic, from the Legend Fiction community. I am a lifelong nerd who absolutely loves writing novels and wants to be as helpful as possible to help others start and finish their dream novels and sell more books and find your audience, right? And basically have a good time or have a better time or enjoy the process of creativity because it can be tough. It can be tough to create, can be tough to keep going, and if you've got a fire in you that this is something that feels important, I honestly believe it very well can be. And it's going to be if you've just never started. Well, how about you do? What happens if you do? What would it look like if you do? What kind of things could you create? What might need to change or update in your life? And sometimes a lot of it just starts between your ears before it even comes to your desk. And so that's why we spent a while going over deep dives and talking about um, stuff that's just, how to think about things like imposter syndrome and confidence and over planning and just so many of these things are if you're just, scrolling Instagram or doom scrolling Instagram, if you're just learning how to be a writer by watching social media, you're probably ingesting, you're being fire hosed with a ton of stuff that isn't actually helpful because there are a lot of people who also have no idea what they're doing and aren't really sharing very helpful advice. Now, there are some who are, and they are fantastic. And so take everything that you hear with a grain of salt. And every time you're talking with me, bring a bucket of salt. I'm just here to share what has made sense for me, what has worked for me. So I hope that it can be absolutely helpful. So I just need to head over to YouTube while we are talking because today's topic, I'm going to pull up the current live stream. I just realized I got to rename that thing. The topic for today is about genres, okay? Why they can be really, really helpful. And if you've never, I don't know, if you're on the fence about how to handle a genre, so give me a second. I'm just going to rename this thing. If you are on the fence with what a genre is, let's go with why genres matter and what to do about it. Plus, we've got two guests actually coming on today. We have Gabi Batel and we have, um, hold on, I forgot the name of my guest who's showing up at about 11, Nick Nethery. That's right. Nick Nethery. We're going to talk about military science fiction, which is what he writes, I think, and fantasy. I think it's going to be fun. So we've got a full morning ahead of us, and I'm glad to be spending the time with you. If you're just brand new here and you have never heard of this writing community or just what this community is or anything, again, like I said, hi, I'm Dominic. I'm somebody who gosh, I just loved writing and writing novels since forever. And so I started at 13. That's when I wrote my first novel. So that's part of my story. And then I wrote a sequel at 16. I did try writing a second novel. It was a science fiction, fast-paced, shoot 'em up epic. I think I was probably like 14 or 15, but then a virus hit my dad's computer and it just went through and destroyed all the files and everything. And it was so I think it was actually an early source of trauma for me to open my novel and scroll down to page 50, and all it was garbled messes of letters, and it was so horrifying for me to see that it took me years to go back and ever try to, like, rewrite a novel. After that, it was like, back up everything, like, I still remember the echo of the floppy drive because I would back up every single day to an external floppy drive. Okay, if anybody's old enough to remember that. Um, yeah, and then we got into solid state hard drives later on and stuff. But anyhow, so writing novels forever. It's been a thing for me. Um, it's one of the reasons why genres can be so helpful. So let's get into that. Let's talk about genres. What are your questions about genres? They're sort of an evolving thing. I think it's also fair to say that they are kind of a marketing thing, and we've had kind of 100 years of playing one specific kind of game, and genres are rules in a specific game. You know what's absolutely funny is when you go back to before genres were invented and how trippy those stories were because there wasn't a clear set of expectations or like rules for the kinds of stories, right? Because back then they would tell these sort of fantasy stories that would become sort of sci-fi that were deeply philosophical because the point of the story, which is something they understood back, a lot earlier, the point of a story. Oh, hey, Gabby's with us.
Hi.
Good morning. So this
Good
might actually
morning. How
get a
you
whole
doing?
lot cooler. I was chatting
Oh,
about genres, right? I was trying to make sense of like
yes.
what is a genre. So I'm kind of glad you dropped in. Maybe we'll have a lot more fun with this, and then maybe we'll go with this for 15 minutes and then chat for a half hour on the school recording. Does that work?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm just here without notes. I've got a title. I'm like, okay, let me see if I can brain dump what I think about this topic and try to be helpful.
Nice.
So let me recap. Here's what I'm thinking. So the benefit and the downside of genres is
Mhm.
that they are kind of like, where was my head going? They're kind of like uh, rules in a game. Okay, they're rules in a marketing game that's only existed for like the last 100 years. Now, we can argue about that. They can be very good rules. I think they can be very helpful, but it's also probable that they're helpful today because our expectation of what a book is and what
Mhm.
it does for us is very different compared to if you're George MacDonald or, 150 years ago, right? Back then, when somebody's trying to craft a novel and they're just sort of throwing everything into these things, it's science fiction, philosophy, and fantasy, and it's like awesome and trippy, right? Why? It's because back then they understood something we've kind of forgot, right? Mostly today. The point of a novel is to, or the point of a story, it's like Martin Shaw calls myths a contact sport. Okay.
Mm.
It's not something, oh, it's nice and it's pleasant and it's just lies breathed through silver. It's like, nope. Myths are sacred stories. They go to work inside you like enzymes, like little engines, right? And you take them in and they start transforming you from the inside out. And so when people would be like, well, hey, what if I told us a myth that wasn't like 3 pages? What if it was like 500 pages? And I didn't stop because this is a really complex idea. And the smarter people get and the smarter their audience gets, they're like, keep it going, say more. I don't think your 2 paragraphs actually did justice to the depth of this story. It's then you get the Iliad. Um, and then the Odyssey, and then you get George MacDonald's doing these awesome books. And then people begin to realize, okay, if we keep creating within predefined parameters, if we have consistent outcomes for the feeling and the vibe and the flavor and the kinds of characters associated with something, it's easier to sort of spin these up. It's also easier to sell them. And so fast forward like 150 years or so, and here we are today, and genres have they're just so helpful just for marketing, and
Mhm.
I'm not exactly sure that there's really any other bigger reason than that. So, now we have another problem, which might be, what do you call it? Genre lockdown, and and then it creates these sort of weird intertidal zones where you try to blend one
Yes.
genre into another, and people can get really creative with that, but
Mhm.
then you get into another problem where people just they love the comfort zone of what a
Mhm.
genre can be, and
Mhm.
so some people will try to blend over into another genre thinking like, "Well, if I can mix fantasy plus sci-fi, I'm gonna get a bigger piece of the pie," and what ends up happening is you only get the very small sliver of people who
Who
actually
like
do.
sci
Right?
fantasy,
Sci
right?
fantasy. And so then you have to then try to compete in like other ways to try to, grow your thing. So it's kind of a bit of a mess. And I think a lot of us, I don't know if that's necessarily me. I kind of like the constraints of knowing what a trope is and what are the expected tropes and
Mhm.
characters in a genre. I admit half the time I just don't think about it. I do kind of whatever I want, but it's sort of generally within the vibe of this genre, especially if I want to be able to tell somebody, what is the novel about? Well, it's a fantasy thriller. Oh, got it. I know what to expect. And if you know what to expect from something, you're more likely to part with your money or your
Right.
time. So, what are some of your biggest complaints and sort of like positive things about genres and why they're helpful for fiction authors?
Well, one thing I find helpful about genres is that, like you said, you get what you're expecting. And in a way, that's not so far different from, like, say, the first chapter of a book. When you're in the first chapter of a book, we need to lay down some laws, so that I know what I'm expecting. So I don't walk into this expecting a completely normal general fiction. And then by the end, there's like, astral projection. And I'm like, what are we even here for? Why am I here? This was not what
Right.
I came for, kind of a thing. So in a way, it's just a promise, it's an expectation. And I think in a way that's something that I actually really enjoy.
Mhm.
Just because it puts us on a little bit of stable ground. The other thing that I enjoy about genres, but is the fact that you can break them so easily. You can break and change and make new ones. I mean, they are always, always making new versions or subgenres. So, like, genre is such a broad term.
Mhm.
It's almost like saying dog. And then there are
Right.
just so many types of dog underneath it that you can get
Mhm.
almost whatever you want. You know, you have cozy fantasy, like we were talking about, you have sci fantasy, you have classic fantasy, epic fantasy. Well, I guess classic fantasy would be epic fantasy. But then you have like fantasy thrillers, cozy fit. I did already say cozy fan, whatever. There are just so many that
Mhm.
I find it actually a lot of fun that you probably will never ever actually create a brand new subgenre, but you could delve into one that not many people have done before. I mean, until recently, cozy fantasy wasn't really a thing. And then a couple of years ago, Legends and Lattes came out and maybe a couple of other ones, and everybody was like, "Oh my goodness, this is actually really cool." So that's another thing that I really do enjoy about genres is just the fact that they're so broad that you can do so many things in them that you can like practically
Mhm.
break them.
Yeah.
One thing that frustrates me about genres is, like you said, the tropes and the fact that so often it is expected of you just to like hit the baseline. That is it. You know, just hit these tropes. Hit the knife to the throat, hit the enemies to lovers, hit the who did this to you, which I love as much as the next person. But then it feels like it kind of takes away the author's need to do like your own independent thinking and come at it in a creative way and do things differently. It's just like, oh no, if you hit these points, then you are writing romantasy, whatever, and then you have made a romantasy book, a fantasy book, a sci-fi book. And I feel like that is quite a disservice to just kind of the publishing world because at some point, when are we just publishing the same book? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, I just
You're
started
just
a book.
shuffling the Uno deck and then just shipping that again.
Exactly, exactly. So that's one thing that's frustrating about genres to me. And also, kind of on the flip side of what I just said, that while there is like so much, it is easy for you to break like the rules. Like it's so easy and available for you to break the rules however you want to. At
Mhm.
the same time, like you said, because there's just so many splinter genres and people, they like their own probably single-ish most of the time what falls into the like baseline middle. It
Mhm.
can be harder to find people who like those external things, but I'm not sure if that's like a genre issue or more of a like culture issue kind of a
Mm.
thing.
Interesting.
Like, if that makes sense. So I don't know if it's like the idea of genres faults that people are choosing to like stick so and not all of them do, you know, because like obviously there are a lot of people who like these smaller genres because they're doing well, so clearly
Mhm.
there's a good um there's a good audience there.
Mhm.
But how cool would it be if people from more audiences were open to more subgenres
Mhm.
so that all of those books could do well with a whole lot more people versus solely everyone needing to find their niche.
Mhm.
But then on the flip side of that, so I'm just spitballing here,
Yeah.
maybe
Keep
it's a good
spitting.
thing. Maybe it's a good thing that there are niches and that they are so specific and that there are people who specifically like specific things. Because imagine if everybody liked more things, you know, that's more competition for more authors,
Mhm.
because it's like, okay, well, if there are only 5 people who write in my specific niche kind of a genre, well, then my readers only have to decide between one of these 5 books, or maybe they can get all 5.
Mhm.
But if this same pool of readers likes 100 authors doing all kind of different things, well then I have to
Mhm.
compete with 100 different people who are
Mhm.
doing things completely different from me, and I can't get a gauge on maybe what people like, what stands out to people. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we could talk about for how genres work, how they don't work, how they
Mhm.
don't like work in favor
Yeah.
of authors. um I think as a whole, they're pretty decent. I think, of course, they do have cons, but I think
Yeah.
as a whole, the idea of a genre is kind of in favor of the author.
Yeah. I think so too, and also it helps an author have some creative constraints because it gives a reader a clear expectation of, as we've said, the
Right.
kind of experience that they're going to buy or go spend time with. It's and again, we have to sort of, I think, understand kind of the history that's led up to where we are. Because if you're Beatrix Potter or you're a lover of Beatrix Potter stuff, and then you walk into the bookstore 2 weeks later, like, I just devoured everything. Is there anything new? It's like, what are you talking about? This is an anomaly. It's like, well, I guess I'll just go reread Beatrix Potter again. Like,
Right.
as opposed to today, and you're just like Barnes and Noble is like printed doom scrolling of just like,
Yeah,
I can't,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. How do you even start to like navigate the store? I literally walk into Barnes and Noble and something switches in my brain and I get exhausted. And it's like my
Do
eyes
you?
fog over and like I just can't. There's just too much here. I love this, and my soul is just kind of like, "You don't need this right now, bro. You actually need to go
Yeah.
write your own, not try to ingest even more, you dang glutton." So, for readers to be able to have these overarching themes, but then, like you say, there's all of these splinter groups, these subgenres, they're so helpful, and here's why I like what a genre can do or can start, because it makes sense to me that you need stories for every season? Like, you need a story for your whole life. What is the myth for your
Mhm,
whole life that you're orienting yourself towards? Okay, that's kind of a big overarching story. A country is united by a great founding story.
mhm,
Um, so it's the same thing with your life. At somewhere, if you poke somebody hard enough, you'll get down to like, what is the story that you wish you were living out and that you're trying to live out? I don't know that there's anybody who has none. If somebody's not doing anything with their life, there's probably some story deep down
mhm.
that they're trying to live out, that they've
Yeah.
watched or read or heard or something. Or maybe they're fighting against another story, which is a different kind of story. Because that's just how humans think and function, is how our
Mhm,
soul works. Stories are the language of how the soul solves problems and lives and does things. But then you also need stories for the season of life that you're in. And then
mhm,
you need stories for like the kind of person you wanna be and the kind of job you wanna have and the kind of parent you wanna be and the kind of teen that you wanna be. There's like we're pulling stories in constantly because a story is somebody in motion and overcoming problems to achieve a goal that they want that matters so much to them. They have to go through hell and back to, to do it. So we need stories for like every day and every stage of our life. And maybe an example that comes to my mind, and I wouldn't know because I don't work out, but if you wanted to make that muscle bigger, you would have to, like, flex that thing, I guess, over and over and eat enough creatine, and I don't know, if you're a bodybuilder in the chat, let me know how this stuff works. I just walk because I don't have any whatever. Um, you might need to stay in a specific lane or a specific genre or a specific, um style of story because you might be re-encountering a specific experience or a character,
mm,
a specific kind of character that you're just like,
mhm.
I don't know what this is. I grok this and the adventure that they're going on. Man, I don't know why this matters to me, but it does. Well, maybe you just need to keep working out that part of your soul. And it's just, you're not able to actually see it or see what's going on. It's actually really, really hard to get a sense of like awareness of what's going on in your soul because a lot of times your soul does not straight up go, okay, here's what I need to self actualize. It doesn't do that. It just goes, you need to go watch Lord of the Rings 50 more times. You're
Right.
chewing on something here, bro.
Mhm.
I love this example from a series called Monarch of the Glen, and um, I think you and I might have chatted about this at some point, Gabby. But he's a chef. He's in, what is he, Glasgow or something, and then he's in the first episode called back home because the family castle
Oh, yeah, I think you did
is
mention this.
under gosh, it's gone so badly into debt that the dad is chronically embarrassed by this, and he's the lord of the castle, but he's old, very old, and he has no idea how to fix this because it's a modern world, and so he basically guilts his son to come home and become the new lord of the castle. And then for like, what is it, 4 to 5 seasons across multiple people, they're just doing like idea of the week to try to save this castle and keep it alive, and it's hilarious. Well, one of the characters, her name is Molly. She's the mom. And spoiler alert, at one point, the aging father dies, and she's now not sure what to do with her life because she's just been married to the lord of a Scottish failing castle since forever. And it wasn't really a very loving relationship. And so she's now given a chance to start to become somebody who could become a wife again. And she has no idea what to do with that, and it terrifies her because she's still lovely, but she's starting to get gray hairs, and all of her kids are grown up, and what possibility is there for me in love? And then this handsome guy comes, older guy comes biking in through town. He's got a dash of the rogue, and she's just enchanted by him, and then absolutely terrified by it. And she runs away from this relationship. And so what she does is she spends like 3 to 4 episodes creating running classifieds in the newspapers to help match make all the young people of the village. And it always struck me as interesting in that she had one specific task, like, in her life that she needed to face up to, but she had none of the internal scaffolding or strength or understanding or anything to do
Mhm.
it for herself. And so she needed to go and help a ton of other people, and then kind of by proxy, sort of feel through their experience of how they're navigating it, negotiate it, talk with them, mentor them, mother them, and then just observe how they're going through it. And that starts to thaw out, her own feeling of what it is. And
Mhm.
then after a while, she realized, oh, I don't need to be wasting my time and doing, well, it wasn't a waste of time, but now it is. I don't need to be doing this anymore. I'm now actually confident I can now go on this date or something. So she was
I
engaging in a
love stuff
ton
like
of,
that.
yeah, it's just great. Um, a ton of these little stories she needed to experience them. I think that's the same thing that can happen with why genres are valuable, why it's important to get to know what are the constraints and the expectations of your genre, because there are people out there. Readers are voracious. They still haven't gone away. Reading is
Mhm.
still growing. Like, storytelling is an $11 billion industry.
Mhm.
And Barnes and Noble is just like opening up new things all over the place. So there's stuff that we don't yet know, but
Mhm.
readers haven't gone away. As much as they might be hard to find or something. So authors should take confidence in that. So finding or understanding your genre allows the reader who's going through something in their life to know that, oh, this story can fit me, or it's for this kind of person. This might be helpful for me. Um, it's just literally being able to put a handle on something so that you
Mhm.
can pick it up.
Yep.
Any closing thoughts on that?
I thought that was great, actually. I was about to compliment the handle analogy.
Oh, well, thank you. So there you go, friends. If you got any questions about that on genres, drop them in the comments and we might come back to it. But that was a short and sweet little under a half hour review of why genres are valuable. And like when it comes to legend fiction, this is something that we have um, gone on to do, which is to host these short story anthologies and stuff. And one of the things that we've done to help authors just sort of get creating faster is clearly spell out it is this kind of a genre, which means we're looking for these kinds of tropes in this genre. So if you
Mhm.
ship us a story that's sort of in the genre and has none of the tropes that we're looking for, we're like, well, this is really fun, but it's not what we're looking for.
Mhm.
Creating those constraints kind of allows you to know all of the things to say no to so
Mhm.
that you can more quickly say yes to the things that actually matter for the project you want to create. So we don't just like, oh, we want just a cozy fantasy story. It's like, nope, we want these kinds of characters in it. We want these kinds of experiences because that's the product that we're trying to assemble. This is the collection we're trying to sell because there are people out there who want that kind of thing, and we're trying to create it for them. Um, if you've never done this sort of thing, it can be really helpful to play in that playground and learn those rules and so on, um, and then decide how you want to apply it. I like the phrase: we don't learn the rules so we can break them. We learn the rules so that we know when to apply them, and that's very
Mm.
different.
I like that.
All right. Let's head over and chat about we're gonna get a little recording for Show Don't Tell, which is kinda
Yes.
cool. This is,
My favorite. My editor brain is happy today.
okay, so let's tee that up, and then we'll just clip this out afterwards because this is the longer live stream, and let's go for about a half hour, and then, the next guest pops on.
Cool.
Hi, friends, and welcome to the Legend Fiction Creative Writing School. I'm your host, Dominic, joined by the awesome Gabby. Her name is not actually awesome. I made that joke before, I
You
shouldn't do it
said
again.
that.
Okay. I'm on a roll. Hi, friends, and welcome to the Legend Fiction Creative Writing School. I'm your host, Dominic, and Gabby Batel is joining us today to talk about Show Don't Tell. Why is this a piece of advice that always comes back up, Gabby, and why is it so hard to get right?
It is so easy to just tell. It is the way that we talk most of the time. It's the way that we think. We think in straightforward, simple statements, and that's great. And also, a lot of older literature the stuff that we were raised on in school kind of a thing.
Mhm,
It's a lot of telling. So
mhm,
we're just really kind of hardwired for telling. The problem is that doesn't quite work anymore because someone along the line, God bless them, discovered that a book is way more immersive if instead of it's like me recapping what happened, instead of it being like the way that we talk, what if it was like the way we experience life? What if it
mm,
is through somebody's eyes versus through our own ears? That's what showing is instead of telling. And
mhm,
it makes for such a more immersive read. It is so much more fun, so much more emotionally impactful.
mhm.
And also, I had a thought and it's gone, but we'll keep going.
No, it's fine, but it's a bit like the difference between hearing about somebody's trip to Disneyland and then actually going there yourself.
Absolutely right.
What you don't want is if you're asking for directions from some crotchety old farmer with a straw in his mouth and he's leaning on a fence and you're like, "How do I get to the whatever?" And then he starts trying to show you. It's like, "No, no, no. Just tell me where to go." So there's a time and place. When it comes to a novel, we're like, I want to experience, I want to get inside the skin and the boots of this character who's going about doing this thing. What does it feel like so that I can draw my own conclusions and feel my way through actually going on this adventure, actually doing this myself? Uh, so yes, I think you're right. I think we have learned something over this past century about the
Mhm.
power of showing allows you to feel like you're going on an experience that's more immersive. All right, where do you want to go from this? We've got a whole bunch of lovely little ways to do it, ways to be practical, but let's stay up in the level of framing and how to think about this. So you've got a note here. It can make or break a book, and you recommend to just overwhelmingly do show. So let's talk about that for a second. How does it go wrong? How do you think about doing it right? Let's paint that picture.
Absolutely right. So you just said right, and then I repeated it. I'm sorry. It's early. It's not that early, but it's early for me. Okay. The reason that you want to show way more than you tell, and like you said, there are times and places to tell. But the reason that you want to show the most is because it really can completely alter the reading experience and it can actually bolster other parts of the story that maybe start out a little weak. So, if you have a plot that is doing what it's supposed to do, but it could use some tender loving care. Or if you have a character who some of their backstory, but they could really use a little bit more development, actually showing instead of telling is a great sign that you are learning more about it as you are discovering the writing, as you are writing the draft. You are actually learning more about your plot, your character, your world, your motivations, that kind of a thing. And it also will actually express the book, even in an underdeveloped state. It'll express the book in a much more developed way. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a character, right? And you tell me that they are, the really smart one who has a hard time in social situations or whatever the case may be. You have in your head that that's a character. Is it completely developed? No, maybe you don't have a great idea of their backstory, a little tiny inkling of their motivations, not a great idea about their, what their defense mechanism is. You haven't quite pinpointed that, but you have this gist of a character. Okay, if you tell me that they are the super smart character who has a hard time in social situations, then that is all I know. I know just about as much as you, actually less. I know less than you. But if you show me this character without telling me anything, don't tell me anything. Just show this character going to school. They get a straight A without even having to study. They go up to the whiteboard, and while they're still thinking about something else, they solve this really complex math problem. They get invited to a party and they blush really hard, but they say okay. And they're listening to an audiobook about, quantum physics as they are like dragging their feet up to the party, picking at their clothes because they're like, I don't know if I should have worn this. They didn't know what to wear, so they just wore a blouse, whatever. They go in and they just shrink themselves into the back. They have a ping pong ball and a beer cup, and instead of drinking it, they're just dropping the ping pong ball in and taking it out. And I think you have a much better image of that character
It sounds
now.
very, very accurate here, Gabby. I mean, you're talking out of personal experience, maybe.
Oh my goodness, am I? But That is a much better example of the character, and you have a better idea of who they are. They
Mhm,
feel more developed. Maybe you don't even have an idea of what exactly their motivation is, what exactly their defense mechanism is, but because you've shown them in action instead of just telling me, you at least have a feel for them. You're like,
mhm,
"Okay, well maybe their defense mechanism is just blocking other social situations out." I mean, they were listening to an audiobook on the way over. You know, they wore this blouse that was kind of like a don't pay attention to me blouse. They're sitting in the corner. They're not drinking any of the beer, that kind of a thing. All of that, even if you hadn't pinpointed it, you're getting more of an idea of what this character's like, what drives them, what stops them. And just because you showed instead of telling, I put no thought into that character. I made that up right now.
mhm,
I have not spent any time with this character.
mhm.
But because I showed you instead of telling you, I now have a better idea and you had a much more fun time listening.
Right, because there's something that we do where we take when let's like when you walk into a room and we look at the people in that room, for better or for worse, we make snap judgments about
Exactly right.
who they are. What do I think my experience of them is going to be if I go over and talk to them? So we take like in it's like less than 7 seconds, I think is the, whatever the studies were or something. It's probably in point 0.4 of a second. We take one snap look at that person, the kind of hair that they have, the kind of clothes that they're wearing, how they're using their body, how they stand, how
Mhm.
loud they are, how introverted they are. We take all of that information, we form very quickly a snap judgment, like, I think that they're like this. And it can be it's more interesting when you're
Mhm.
reading a novel or a story for you to kind of be able to build up your own snap judgment of a character. Um, and that's actually why you can also get different people reading the same story and having like totally different takes, and the fandom sort of goes at each other because like, no, they're fantastic. Yeah, I ship this guy. And you're like, did you even read the same book? You know, what's an
Mhm.
example in your own stories, Gabby, as you're writing, where you started writing something and then you realized, oh, I'm telling, let's go back and then show it. Do you have a scene that sort of comes to mind that explains that?
Good question. Not in recent memory because I am such a stickler for this. I am such a hard stickler for this, especially in my own case, that I more often will lean on the now you're showing too much, girl. This is not important. Just say it and move on. So
Okay.
I will say though that in early drafts of my first book, Don't, all I did was tell. All I did was tell. And I remember, writing a version of the draft, right? And then I would go and learn, because at first what I did was I was just like, I can write a book, and I started typing, and then I was like, maybe other people know how to do it better than I do, and so I went and learned. I watched some videos, I read some books, and then I came back and I reread this scene, and not only was it just underdeveloped in the fact that this at this point in the plot, this thing shouldn't be happening, but I also was just having her express everything she was thinking in the plainest words imaginable. She
Mm,
was never actually doing much. She was just having kind of thought processes where she was telling herself one thing and then telling herself another thing and basically having a fight with herself in her mind.
mhm,
And it was missing so much because of that. And I'm just thinking, had I done some showing,
mhm,
had I had her grapple with this in a room while doing something, this back and forth in her head, but being played out physically or just even if not like physically, just through some forward action, that in itself actually would have, in a way, progressed the plot
mhm,
because she's grappling with it versus her just fighting statements in her head.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Let's talk then excuse me, let's talk now about, sort of practical ways to start making
Mhm.
sense of this, because you can talk theory, and let's get practical. I wanna start with an example that came to my mind of a story that I wrote, recently. It was, I may have actually referenced it on a previous lesson, but it's the banner mark story that I wrote called The Sign of the Visioneer, and, there's 2 levels of show that felt obvious to me, so I wanna throw them at you, Gabby, see what you know, any thoughts that come to your mind. The first one was as the guy, the hero, Draviel, is running down a pier, uh, towards the lakefront, and, routinely as I'm writing, I'm thinking, if this was a movie, what would you see? Where would the
Mhm.
camera be? Like, how epic would this look? And so on. And then I suddenly realized as he reaches the edge of the pier, I need to communicate that this thing is so dangerous that he could die. Now, I could have him look up and down and go, man, this is so dangerous. I could die. Hmm. And then realize, oh my gosh, that's the most boring thing ever. What would a movie do? You would have
Mhm.
somebody leaning, yelling at you from behind. You're mad, man. You can't go out there. You'll die. Oh, wait, that is so much more interesting to have somebody else
Mhm.
challenge him and so, "Okay, I need to create" so I created a harbor master tying down his boat as he's running past me. "Where are you going?" He's like, "I need hooks. I gotta get across the lake." And so, "Well, you can't go out there. It's like the snow is coming and you'll never last." And so all of a sudden, something that could have been like 1 to 2 sentences that communicated kind of nothing, all of a sudden now becomes a more dynamic conversation
Mhm.
because one person is sort of drawing out the thought from the other person. It's just so much more interesting to read and also to write. So so that's one little thing that jumped out at me. Then the second level of show comes when I finished the story and I went back and realized, oh, my character actually is a stickler for doing things on time, and that's
Mhm.
actually what his sort of survival skill for getting through this story and for feeling confident that he can do what he wants to do to rescue his friend. It's actually because he's nuts about being on time, and in fact, being early is already late. So,
Mhm.
okay, that's interesting. Let me go through the story now from that point of view and see how that level of his character can I show that through what he pays attention to. So it's a medieval fantasy story. He doesn't have a wristwatch, but he's routinely checking the blue sand in the hourglass, and he's like, I'm out of time. And that's the first line is his captain looks at him going, "You got somewhere better to be, soldier?" It's like, well, yeah, I'm supposed to be on the wall top. I've got a prearranged, uh, lantern swinging, session with my buddy who's out in the dark, and we need to make sure we're both alive. And so when he finally gets to the wall top after this whole big delay, he's like, "Whew, I just made it." And that's a big relief for him. And so that's trying to set up this guy has a particular attitude towards how he sees the world. Can I try to make everything that he sees filtered through his attitude, his point of view? So he's a warrior. He's not going to look at the world the way a Visioneer does. In
Mhm.
fact, when we come to the climax scene and he's grappling with this, spoiler alert, magical crystal elk. No, I wasn't drinking something. Um, and he's in this battle sequence. All he can see is here's the problem to be solved, and then he solves it in a dramatic way. Whereas the Visioneer, who is used to channeling magic constantly, realizes something completely different from the situation, and then that leads to a follow-up conversation. So the kind of character that your character is will influence what you show, because an archaeologist and a military captain, they're going to see totally different things about the situation that they're in, and it can be really awesome to get inside their head and show only what they would pay attention to. Um,
That's
so
100% right.
yeah, back over to
Because
you.
again, you're seeing everything through your narrator's eyes, and with their
Mhm,
eyes comes their predispositions, what they would notice versus what they would not notice. And that's one of the things that you do want to avoid is you don't want to say walk into a room and just listicle everything that is there.
mhm.
Like you said, it needs to be, and we'll touch on this more in a second, so I won't dive completely into what I want to elaborate on right now, but you do want each of the things that you show to have a meaning and a purpose, and then we will move on.
Okay, well, let's do it. Um, tell only when something isn't important.
Yes, so there are instances when you can tell. Editor Gabriella has actually come out of the box and given you permission. Yes, there are times where you can tell instead of showing. The times you want to tell is when it really is not that important. You just need to get from A to B. Let's say, for example, time passes. You can say, 2 weeks of trekking through the mountains later, done. That's very much telling, but nothing happened during those 2 weeks. If something had happened, I would have stopped and I would have shown you with a scene. You can, for example, to summarize some quick actions. In fact, I actually just wrote a telling paragraph in my novel because there was this really, really emotional scene between the main character Priam and his twin sister Cesara. It was very sad. and then I needed to jump to the next important scene, and there was some, like, I don't wanna call it small talk, but, like, some practical talk that had to happen in between. He's about to
Mhm.
go do something that's really dangerous, it's making Cesara really sad, and he's like, "Okay, I need you to do A, B, C, D. Like, while I'm gone, I just need you to take care of this." Could I have shown that? Sure. Maybe, who knows, I'll go back and revise and be like, "No, this would be really, really important for the characters to see." Or so excuse me, for the readers to see.
Mhm.
But at the moment, I don't think it is. It's just some stuff that
Mhm.
needs to happen basically so that you as the reader are not like, "Wait a minute, why didn't this happen? Or why didn't we take care of this? Are we forgetting that?" It's just me telling you that it's all taken care of. And
Mhm.
the thing about that is if I were to actually dive in and do a full showing scene of it, it could actually take away from the really emotional moment. Because
Mm.
really emotional or more poignant moments, now there are going to be a lot in your story because it is a whole book's worth of showing. So there are a lot of important things that are going to happen, but those only stay important if all the other unimportant stuff is just skimmed over. It's like a
Mm.
reminder to your reader, look, a lot of things are happening. I need you to pay attention to the stuff that is worthwhile because that's what I'm doing. And the
Yep.
stuff that isn't worthwhile, we'll just get
Mhm.
over it, just enough to keep you going,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are times where you can tell. I think I heard a number, please do not quote me on this number, but I think it's a good gist. Maybe a I don't even want to say a quarter, maybe a tenth of your book total, like of the word count, can be telling.
Mhm.
Even once in a while, even if it is an emotion
Mhm.
that hurt me to say, but once in a while, if it is an emotion and you don't want it to gain so much attention because there are other places that deserve so much more attention,
Mhm.
uh, you can tell it. Let's say you gave somebody a gift, the main character gives somebody a gift, but it's kind of just, it's not this big kind of connection moment, bonding, furthering the relationship, healing backstory. It's none of that. It's just a throwaway gift. Here, have this.
Mhm.
And you could say that it made her really happy.
Yeah.
Okay.
It it's kinda like, the way that we talk, like, also in real life when we're recounting something that happened or an experience that we happened. I'm thinking of, like, a dumb situation where, I don't know, a group of people around a fireplace at night, camping, and somebody says, "Hey, did you know that I was, hunted by a werewolf last night?" And they're like, "Oh my gosh, do tell." It's like, "Okay." So, when I woke up yesterday morning, my alarm clock hadn't just yet turned past 6, and I knew that I needed to start plating my eggs, and like, "So when did the werewolf come?" That was, like, about 3, 4 hours later. So, I'd laid out some nicely pressed pants and like, "Dude, just,
Just get to the
okay."
good part. Isn't
The
that a song?
only
Can we
reason you
good
might
part?
be wanting to reference breakfast is the fact that one of the eggs was bad and it
Yeah, and
made
you
you
got
feel
food
really
sickness
sick
while
for
you were fighting
later,
a
and so that's
werewolf.
why you missed a deadline or something. Well, none of that is actually important. Now, if there
Mm-mm.
was a werewolf crawling around under the floorboards that you couldn't hear at all, then sharing every single one of those annoying little details is actually very interesting and kind of the point of the whole scene.
Mhm.
But, goodness, I had another thought and I forgot. Anyhow, so let's get into some of the practical things. So, for example, you've got details, body language, dialogue. So let's start with details. Um, so show don't tell. What goes through your mind with details and how to be practical and helpful with that.
Right. So when you're showing instead of telling with details, that is most often for, say, an environment. It can be for people a little bit, but for an environment, instead of saying the house was dilapidated, right? That's a telling sentence. You just summarized what could be told by telling me that the window is broken and there's mold and moss on the windowsill, and inside there is black mildew, and there's also lichen growing inside, and the steps creak when you walk on them, and also a couple of them are wet and squishy, and one of them, when I stepped on it, it actually started to break, and the nails are all rusty and the pictures are covered in dust. Mm. Now I told, like, the house is still dilapidated. I told you all of that.
Mhm.
But I told you through the details. I showed you instead of just telling you,
Mhm.
and that A gives you a much grander picture in your head of what is going on, because dilapidated, it's a summary word. It can be very, very vague. What exactly do you mean by dilapidated? I know what it means, but what is there? What is not there? What specifically about this house is dilapidated? So it's more specific, it's more immersive. Now, as I was saying before, you don't want to go into any situation and then just again listicle everything about every room. You want to be selective because if you don't, then you get into the world of purple prose or chunks of like, I guess it wouldn't be info dumping, but just too much describing all at once.
Yeah, that
So you need to pick your
doesn't
battle.
actually do yeah, it's not actually doing anything because the point of description is set the scene, but
Mhm.
how does that, like you say, move the plot along?
Mhm.
Um, like you mentioned a dilapidated house, and I was thinking, how would you describe a house that is meticulous and that's
Mhm.
actually communicating something about the person who lives there? What if
Mhm.
the letterbox was freshly painted again, and then somebody asks, "Who dusts their windows from the outside?" Like,
Outside.
right? And so now all of a sudden, okay, who is this kind of person? We've got 2, 3 data points that indicate the kind of person that we're dealing with, as opposed to, like, the house, everything is, like, perfectly measured, every cupboard is 6 inches from the wall. That's, like, one that's basically all you need to say, and then we can sort of fill in probably how the rest of the house is. Um, yeah, so don't like you're saying, just don't overdo it. We don't need everything purple prose. Goodness. Okay, keep going.
That's exactly right. And well, that's pretty much it.
Mm, there we go. All right.
That's exactly like you said.
Okay, so then let's move on to well, body language and dialogue.
Now we get to the people. So
Mhm.
before we were mostly describing environments,
Environment, yeah.
and it can apply to people when you're like first meeting them, so that, like you said, let's say that their house is super meticulously taken care of. Well, now I have an idea of the person who owns it. Same with, the first time I am introduced to somebody, it's like, okay, the way that they look, the way that they have chosen to do their hair, the way that they dressed, what kind of cologne they wear, if they wear cologne at all, do they wear deodorant, and whatever the case may be. I have an idea of that person just to, like, get me going. Even a little bit of a side tangent here, but even their name can work in your favor that way. What kind of person would probably have that name? I remember there is a character in this book called, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and he is a very, very important character to the entire series. Uh, I would dare say the most important character, but he's not present for the first like 50 pages of the first book, which is a good chunk into the first book. They're not super long. And the main character talks about him though. And so we needed to have an idea of who he was, and the author says that she took a lot of time deciding this character's name because you don't see him in the first 50 pages. She needed to show us in some way what he might be like, and she chose to do that through his name, and his name is Wendell Bambleby. And I'm
Hmm.
sure you have an idea of what that guy might be like just by that kind of name. So you can use details for people to a certain extent, but people are so much more than just the things we can see about them. And the next thing that human people pick up on is, first thing I do is I see you. The next thing I do is I watch you, and I watch how you respond to situations. I watch how you respond to me. And it is just this constant back and forth of most of the time gauging off of people's body language. Are your shoulders hunched? Do you sit straight backed? Are your eyes always darting all over the place? You know, there's so many things we can glean from body language, not only just personality, but also your individual reactions to individual things, like when someone looks left when they lie. So if you're speaking and I see you look left in a book, I've shown you that this person is more than likely lying, but
Mhm.
I have not told you. And that again makes it so much more dynamic because recapping a story, I could probably say he was probably lying because
Mhm.
that is kind of the thought that would flit through my head next.
Mhm.
But because I know what a left look means, and you as the reader know what a left look means because we are human beings and we know how this kind of a thing happens, then we've put it together in our head. And when we have to work a little bit, when you trust your reader enough to get what you're putting down without spelling it out A, B, C, D, it makes it so much more of a fulfilling experience for the reader because they are engaging, they are interacting, they are able to, stretch that brain muscle, and it's so much more fun for them. And also, again, it feels more realistic.
Mhm. Well, we are also able to form a snap judgment on our own the same way that we're meeting a person in real life. And so
Mhm.
it's something else where an author is kind of tapping into how human psychology works, how the human brain works, how we like to function. I'm thinking as you're talking of latest show that I finished rewatching is Peaky Blinders, right?
Mhm.
And this is such a fun example of the show don't tell in terms of language, dialogue, body language, stuff like this. For example, Tommy Shelby, right? Main character, when he enters into a conversation with somebody, and let's say there's somebody in the room that he has no respect for. What he doesn't do is fold his arms, look over at them, and go, I have no respect for you. Don't talk to me. Who does that? Nobody does that.
Right.
Instead, what he does is as soon as that person starts talking, he looks at the other person and goes, how's your dog?
That's
Just
perfect.
complete. And it's actually very chilling. And then the other guy's like, no, we're all here. Would everybody please stop fighting? It's like, and he just ignores. I know exactly where your daughter goes to school. He's already just dismissed this guy and he's now dealing with this other person. Just without saying anything else, right? You're showing how he wants to interact with the situation. Then at another point, there's a psychopathic guy. This is like season 5, maybe, who's in, House of Lords, very, very wealthy lord kind of character. He comes walking in and he is somebody who has a lot of power. Now you could portray that two different ways. You could have somebody come walking in and look at you and go, do you know who you're dealing with? You're nothing. I am everything. Right. Okay, you could do that. That's one way. Well, what's another way you could do? Bad guy comes walking in and he's completely relaxed and he's
Mhm.
happy to smile. And he picks up and he lights one of your cigarettes and he drops the
Mhm.
ash on your carpet. And then
Mhm.
when he's done talking to you, he just drops it to burn out on your carpet and walks out. So there's
That's
the
so good.
words that was said, but then there's the delivery, the body language, how it was chosen to be expressed. It's so much more chilling, it's so much more immersive, and now you're kinda, like, with Tommy Shelby, kind of watching this guy, and you're just studying him. There's the words you say that are trying to be so nice and helpful for the people of England, but then how he treats you says something more about the kind of person that he is. So, we gotta start wrapping this up, but, what are a couple of other little things that you want? I think we kind of hit, like, subtlety and under dramatic, like, we kind of just touched on that with this example. What are
That's
some other things that
exactly
you wanna
right.
do or talk about?
Exactly. So, real quick, just I noticed that a pitfall when people are trying to show is that they go for the most like obvious, over dramatic, please don't miss what I'm trying to say here thing that could possibly express, and that you also want to avoid,
Mhm.
because that almost in a way is telling, even though you are showing, but you're not trusting your reader. So just always trust your reader. Go for the quieter one. Go for the underplayed one, like you said with the cigarette. That's a perfect example. It's not out there loud, "Hey, I'm evil." But you, as the reader, know that he is evil because
Mhm.
you know what that kind of behavior means.
Yeah.
You can also do some showing through dialogue, but not by having the main character say what they are thinking or what is happening. Never, 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 not allowed. If you must tell something, it is never in dialogue, okay? Never in dialogue.
Because
There are, of
nobody
course,
actually
always
talks that
exceptions.
way. Yeah, no, unless you're literally reading a military brief, like, nobody actually talks that way like an actual
That's
person. Pay
exactly
attention to
right.
your own dialogue and in real life.
That's
It's a good
exactly
learning thing.
right, and we'll have a whole
Victor
month worth of that, afterwards,
okay.
but a lot of time in dialogue, what isn't there
Mhm,
is actually the type of showing. So I'll give you a
mhm.
quick example, I've probably given it before, but if one person says, "I love you," and the other person says, "Okay," eh, there's a lot going on right there, right?
Right.
And it's not because the other person said, "I actually hate you," or "I don't feel the same way." It's because of what they didn't say.
Mm,
So that's how you show instead of tell with dialogue.
mhm.
Looking at my notes real quick.
I've got a good comment from Victor in the chat. He says, "It's why it's called a TV show, not a TV tell."
Tell, I
That's
love
pretty good.
that. I'm keeping that. Okay, the last couple of things that I want to touch on
Mhm,
is that number one, think hard about the implications of everything that you say because a lot of times you can chop down a lot of your word count, a lot of your excess sentences, just because you are actually inadvertently repeating something that you've already implied. I'll give you an example from a book that I actually have not read, but I heard someone else talking about how they read it. There's a character who can water bend, for lack of a better word. Their magic is with liquids. And so that is expressed to us. Okay, that's fine. And then the next sentence is, because they're in a dangerous situation and they got to get out. The next sentence that they say is, blood is a liquid. Well, okay, we already know that. And if you had just then had the main character bend some blood, do some magic with some blood, we would have made that connection because you already said he can mess with liquids. And then you're showing him mess with liquids. You wouldn't have need to say blood is a liquid to connect those dots because we, as the reader, will have already connected the dots because you are showing
Mhm,
him doing his power, right?
mhm,
And the final thing I want to talk about, actually, that was the same thing. It's two notes of the same thing. So I'll just wrap up there.
okay.
So, when you are writing, think about the implication of every sentence you write, what the character can glean, or excuse me, what the reader can glean from that
Mhm,
outside of what you have actually said, and then be very, very, very careful not to repeat it. It is so
mhm,
easy to repeat it with kind of a tangent or a similar phrasing or a piece of telling that is meant to, supplement that. Don't do that. Every sentence you say carries a whole lot more weight than you're expecting.
mhm,
And think of yourself as the reader. If I were to read the sentence in isolation, what assumptions would I make? And then use that, play off of that, and take away anything else that's just going to crowd that
mhm.
and pack extra words in that aren't
Yeah, yeah.
necessary. They take away from the strength
You
of
can
the
almost even feel it in yourself, like, as you're writing and you're writing your paragraph of description, and then this is what I get, "Oh, I'm being an author right now."
Yes.
I get that little feeling, it's like you, "Oh, let me do more authory stuff."
Mhm.
And you keep writing, and the paragraph just gets longer. The first time that I ever went to a group read that was advertised in a newspaper, my dad drove me over to the next town, and I sat down and I read the first page of my story, and I got to the end and realized, as I was reading it aloud, absolutely nothing had happened, except for the fact the guy was riding a horse. It was a whole page of purely description. I'm being an author right now. So much description, nothing had happened, and I
Mhm.
look back and I cringe thinking about that whole room of adults just, like, looking at this 15, 14-year-old kid, who'd showed up and just, "Okay, start with, if you're going to describe stuff, describe only what's needed that
Mhm.
communicates the character." Um, if you ever start feeling that I'm being an author sort of feeling, and I'm gonna pull a Tolkien, let's just purple this thing up. And if you ever start feeling that, that's a moment where authors would go, "Murder your darling." Okay?
Mhm.
That needs to just just take it out. The story will probably be okay. And for
Mhm.
me, it's a bit of a flex, but it just makes me feel happy how, after shipping that story, Sign of the Visioneer, I had a young reader from the Legend Fiction community email me afterwards going, "I've only read halfway through, but oh my gosh, he's so brave. The main character is so brave. I don't know that I could do that." And I'm like, You do realize I made it all up. It's like, I could make him do anything, right? You're actually that tells me I did something cool. I closed a gap
Mhm.
in the reader's experience
Yep.
to actually believe that, this is believable.
Yep.
So I think that's a good example of the power of show don't tell. So get your writing assignment in, friends, for this week, and we will see you in the next lesson.
Talk then.
Alrighty. That's a good recap there.
That
Thank
was
you so
great.
much,
Thank
Gabby,
you.
for jumping on. I'm gonna
That was
bring in
fun.
our next guest.
Wonderful. All
Agreed.
right. I will bounce. Good to see ya.
Absolutely. It's good to have you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Hello, Nick.
Hey, howdy. How are you?
I am good. How are you, sir? Thanks for waiting.
Awesome. Oh, sure, absolutely.
Just wrapping up with my previous guest, Gabby. She helps me host the creative writing school. So it is good to catch you for
Neat.
a half hour and talk more. Okay, I've got to ask, what was that tat? It looked like a shark grabbing a
Oh yeah,
bomb or a grenade or
yeah,
something. What is that?
yeah. That's a bomb. He's a bomb. So the second company I commanded, our call sign was Mako.
Wow.
I know that's not a mako shark, but they don't really tattoo very well. Like it's a weird looking shark. So that was my second company, and then on this one I have Felix with a bomb. That was my first
Wow.
company. So
Okay. I mean,
yeah,
well, hey,
just little.
can we just start right there? What is your story? Why do you have two different teams, both with bombs going on? What's some of your background?
I came up in the army. I was a bomb technician. That was my job. So, and I was lucky enough to I commanded two companies of bomb technicians as well, and that was what I did for most of my military career. So yeah, that's them, and I've got the bombs here on the arm, and then I've got my master badge here as well. I'm not really a tattoo guy, but I think if it's service related, it kind of doesn't mean you're, so
Yeah,
that that's okay, I think. So,
amazing. Well, first, thank you for your service, and it's good to have you on the
oh, thank
show.
you.
I'd like to talk about Raconteur Press. You're an author published through them, and I think you've got a new book that's come out. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. The Peace Child. It just published in March, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's a kind of a military fantasy, if you will. It's an alternate Europe 1600s, kind of during the 30 Years wartime. Although it's not, I don't use real country names or anything like that. But it's about that
Hmm.
level of technology plus a little light magic, and it's a kind of a rescue story. An old
Okay.
soldier is asked to escort a peace hostage to a safe haven, and then hilarity and chaos ensues, and it turns into basically a novel length chase scene. So it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Okay. Well, so here's what I'd like to do over the next half hour or so. Let's talk more about the book, and then I'd like to hear a little bit more about like your obsessions as a kid and how you became an author um and then maybe some of your writing habits. How did you get the book done and what's that process look like? And then where can people find you? And so that'll be our flow for this conversation. So let's talk more about the
Great.
book. What is a peace hostage?
It is an ancient tradition. It's a real custom that we used to do back when we had kings and royal families and whatnot. When you lost a war, to ensure that adhered to the ceasefire, the peace treaty, or whatever, you gave the victor one of your kids. It was usually like a youngest son or daughter, and they went to live with the victorious kingdom, and they most of the time were treated okay. Sometimes weren't treated very well. But you see this in a lot of popular fantasy fiction, like several of the characters in Game of Thrones, for instance, are peace hostages because their kingdom or their family lost a war in the past, and so you bring, and like I said, they often were treated very well, but the unspoken kind of the tacit implication was, hey, if you guys start any more trouble, your kid might not fare so well,
Mm-hmm.
because they're here with us. So it was kind
Mm-hmm.
of an insurance policy, kind of barbaric in a way, you know.
Mm.
But so that is this one of these main characters. He's a little boy. He's like 6 years old, and he's the youngest son of the kingdom that lost the war in the last time that hostilities flared up. So, and the the king of the main character, he kind of discovers a conspiracy among his own nobles. They want the war to start back up. You make a lot of money selling wood to build ships, or selling ore to make swords and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
war's good for business. So they want the
Mm-hmm.
war to start back up, and their plan is to do harm to this little boy. So he's the main character, Red. He's asked to take this little boy to safety, along with his caretaker. She's not yet a nun. She's like a novitiate. She hasn't taken her
Okay.
vows yet. But
Wow.
so the three of them kind of go off on this adventure together.
Man, this sounds amazing. It's giving me I just watched what is that new Sisu movie, Road to Revenge or something. This for
Oh,
some
I
reason is
love the
reminding me of
first one.
that. Yeah, I
I
love
love the
both.
first one. I
Yeah.
haven't seen the sequel yet. Funny story. I was in Helsinki right before that movie came out, and
Oh, really?
they are so proud of that movie. It's a Finnish story.
Mm.
It's so they
Is it
were,
based on a
man,
true
posters
story?
of that were just everywhere. I think it's sort of based on a true
Okay.
story. I don't think it's
Okay.
very accurate at all. But yeah, the Finns are very. I love Finnish guys. I worked with a couple of them, and they So anyway, I just weirdly happened to be there right before that movie came out.
No, that's cool. I got somebody in the comments says, "Yeah, this is going to be an explosive interview." That's fun. Um, and he's asking, "Your peace child is this like Theon Greyjoy in Game of Thrones?" Uh,
Yeah,
okay,
that's a good example of one. Yes, he was
okay,
he lived with the Starks, I guess, right? Yeah, he was their peace child. So
interesting. Yeah, man, I've only seen the whole show
good
through once,
example. Yeah.
but what's okay? So, what inspired this story? And let's talk about the main character, Red. I think you said his name was. Why is he the main character?
Red. Yep. His name is Ranford Redgrave. His nickname is Red. Everybody, if you're in the service, sooner or later you get a nickname.
Mhm.
Maybe it sticks, maybe it doesn't, but everyone has a
It's
nickname. So
usually
that's his. That's
embarrassing
his.
too, right? Like you never pick it for
Oh,
yourself.
for sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It has to be embarrassing, or it's not a. It's not. um, but yeah, he's just an old raider. He wasn't really conventional like infantry or anything like that. He was a kind of like a covert, like a spy. He was the guy who would creep over the wall during a siege and like open the gate so the main army could
Oh
go in, or
wow.
he would go and like poison the wells and stuff, you know. So that was his job when he was in. But he's at the end of his career and he just wants to go to his estate that he got awarded for his service and just kind of forget. He's a widower also, so he's still kind of
Mhm.
like grieving his wife, and he just kind of wants to go away and forget the world. He certainly does not want to babysit a little 6-year-old kid who constantly
Okay.
makes poop jokes and like doesn't know how to be quiet, you know. So
Okay.
um, he really hesitantly accepts this mission because it's his king is asking
Yeah,
him.
yeah. I'm getting a bit of a Knight of Seven Kingdoms with Egg as a traveling companion kind of thing.
So I haven't seen any of that. I've heard it's
Okay.
great. I just we haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, yeah. I enjoyed it.
But
I thought it was really fun. Okay.
I'll
So,
take it. I've heard great things about it.
okay. So what inspired the story? Why did you so who's the audience for? Yeah, who's the audience for and what inspired the story?
I mean, it's not a specifically written for children, but I mean, kids can read it. Even I like to keep my what I call PG
Hmm.
13 content.
Nice.
I you might have one swear word maybe, but I mean, if you're a 12 or 13-year-old kid, it's not it's something that you've never heard before.
Hmm.
But it's I mean. Really primarily for adults, but I think, like I said, anything. I mean, I was reading John Grisham when I was in fifth grade, so I don't think
Sure.
I don't think it's necessarily going to be too complicated, even for kids in middle school or whatever.
Hmm. Okay, good. Yeah. Comment in the chat says it sounds a little bit like Terminator, the kid protected by a warrior. Uh, so yeah, what
I'll
inspired you to
take
write
that
this
too.
story?
That's great. Uh, uh, Weirdly enough, the Bible.
Really?
The One of my previous, I don't think I have it anymore. One of my previous Bibles that I had and I used was it's called the Student Bible, and it's every book and then certain chapters they'll have a little interstitial where it's not scripture, it's like commentary or
Mm.
notes, you know.
Hmm.
And one of the commentaries in the New Testament, I forget which book it even was, but it was one of the Gospels. Um, the commentary made the kind of made reference to this custom, the peace child, using it as an allegory for Jesus.
Oh,
And that's,
interesting.
geez, I I I must have been a teenager the first time I read that, and it just intrigued me. The note in the Bible that I was using, it used the reference of the Sawi tribe in, I believe, the Amazon. Don't quote me on that, but when they have this custom today still. They're largely uncontacted tribes in the Amazon, and when they
Hmm.
have wars with each other, to effect a ceasefire, they have this custom still. And so it kind of used that as an example. That just intrigued the heck out of me. I've thought about that for years. And as I got close to finishing my first novel, Relics of the Fallen, I knew that I needed to start on something else. Um, when you finish a first draft, at least for me, it's helpful for me to put it down for a while and work on something else and then come
Hmm.
back to it for revision or editing.
Hmm.
And so I knew I needed to work on something else. And I didn't want it to just be more short stories. I like writing short fiction, but I wanted something with a little more meat. And so I thought, why not? I've been kicking this concept around for decades. Why don't I do something with that? I'm also a huge 30 Years War nerd. It's one of my favorite wars. I'm a historian by
Oh,
discipline.
really?
That's
Wow.
what I that was my degree in school, and so I like those little wars that people don't study a lot, and that's one of them. We just really don't know much. It's not a very popular war to teach or to study. It's also 30 years long, so it's really hard, I think, to internalize all of it in one sitting. Like you can sit
Yeah.
down and watch a documentary about a short war, that happened in one location. It happened all over the civilized world, and like every country almost
Yeah.
got in on it was at one
Yeah.
point or another. So it's difficult to study.
That's
It's just like
really
I said, it's one of my
interesting.
favorite
Mhm.
wars. So I wanted something in that setting with landsnecks and mercenaries roving around, but also with this peace child concept.
That's really fascinating. So, in a minute, I want to press your happy historian button and ask you, please tell us more about this 30 Years' War, since most of us don't know enough about it. But you said
Okay.
what's interesting about that is I just remember hearing the little accounts of people, like what was it, the one group of people or a ship that was stuck up in the Arctic for like a year or something, and they're I don't know, they finally made their way back home, and then they asked, "Man, is the war still going?" And they're like, "Who won the war?" And they're like, "No, the war's still going." And this was like the First or Second World War, or something like that. So
Yeah.
what always impressed me about that was I had been told routinely wars never lasted this long. They were very confined little things. And so for you to remind us, no, this was field practice for like a world war.
Oh yeah.
I just realized this is absolutely horrific. So what is this 30 Years War? Like as high up as you want to go, 30,000, 5,000 foot view of this thing. Um,
Okay.
paint a picture of what was going on. And then why does it so interest you? What is it about that period that so fascinates you?
Um, it is. It started as a religious war.
Hmm.
Basically, it was the people in. Well, it wave tops. I won't get too into detail, but so the people in a certain country got worried that their new king, who was Catholic, would not allow them free practice of their religion. They were largely Protestant at the time.
Is this
Well, a
early
lot of the
1800s or
citizenry.
something like
So
1810?
this is
Oh, 16.
1608, I believe. This all kicks
Okay.
off,
Okay.
and basically the new emperor sends some delegates to Prague to kind of assure these guys that no, we're not gonna, even though he's a staunch Catholic, we're gonna keep. And so they the Protestant citizenry in this assembly, they throw the delegates out the window. Uh, and so these are the emperor's delegates. These are representatives of their ruler, and so he can't have that. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of the start of the whole thing. And then, like I said, most of the free world at the time, Europe at least, um, gets in on this at one time or another. And it starts out, like I said, as a religious war, but then France, a few years later, comes in on the Protestant side, even though they were Catholic at the time, and Sweden gets in on it, and there's technically none of the British countries that got it were in on it, but they all sent a ton of mercenaries. This is when Scots and Irish got their reputation as like just excellent mercenaries, professional soldiers.
Mhm.
Um, Spain, the Netherlands, I mean, countries that don't even exist anymore, they all got in on it at one point or another. And it's fascinating to me because it's the war in our history that is it's the last war that had religious undertones. Like all
Mm.
war has some religious undertones. Everyone prays for victory or for safety or whatever, but this is the last war that was at least began for explicitly religious reasons, and it was so terrible. It was so destructive. And at the end of it, everybody was so. I mean, it was almost like at the how we remember the end of World War One, how everybody was like, "Well, that was god awful. That was horrible decision making all around. Let's never do that again, right?"
Mhm.
And so the treaty that they all signed, the Treaty of Westphalia, it was strong enough and sound enough, and everyone was so horrified. We have that kind of DNA memory of how terrible it was that there's not really been a major religious war since. There's certainly been wars since, but they've never been really
Right.
fought for religious reasons. And that's kind of the beginning. I mean, you need a few other things that happen later, like 1688, the Glorious Revolution, and some other things, but it's kind of the start of our modern non-feudal, non-exclusionary for religious reasons society that we have
Hmm.
today. So it's
Yeah.
fascinating to me for that reason.
Amazing. Wow. Okay. I'm just thinking like we had when was the Hundred Years' War? Is that in the 12th century?
Oh, geez, maybe I don't know. Like I said, I got a history degree, but I couldn't. I mean, I don't know when this or that war happened.
Yeah,
Not
yeah, yeah.
necessarily
It's
off the top of my head.
wars were the one thing in history class I was never interested in because everybody else was nuts about tactics and stuff, and I'm like, I want to understand the myths and the people and the stories instead.
Hmm.
Um, but it
Yeah,
does seem interesting, kind of like to your point that like to have gone from like a 100 years war to then okay a 30 years war, and it's like, and then after that they sort of get shorter and shorter until we get these world wars, but then they're over within actually relatively
yeah,
short time frames. I mean, I think we're learning a lesson. It's just like really, really dumb, or it's not totally that. But just hearing you talk about that, like that's a whole generation of people, like end to end, embroiled in a 30-year period
yeah,
of
yeah,
conflict. It's all you know. It's like how long was that? Spain was like the Reconquista was like it's 800 years. I mean, there's a point at which it's like, okay, I think there's some progress in the human story where we're we're shrinking the periods of conflict down, but it's
yeah.
just
I
more
mean,
brutal
hopefully.
though, more condensed.
At the same time, it's not something we're ever going to get rid of. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm looking out my window right now, and everything out there is trying to kill or eat something else, or trying to
Yeah.
avoid getting killed or eaten. It's just we're animals, man.
Mm,
It's like we can get as sophisticated as we want, and I can wear a tie, and we can call each other doctor or mister or whatever.
mm,
At the end of the day, sooner or later, we're still going to have conflict, and we're going to have to
mhm.
resolve it. And it sucks. I mean, but it's.
Yeah.
I think part of what we have learned, I think, is to try and make it as. It's not going to be humane, but to try to make it as humane as possible.
Yeah. No, I agree. No, that makes sense. So, okay, so the book has just come out. What's been some of the reaction to it? And then I want to ask about some of your other novels that you've written. Like, I was just looking at your website, Relics of the Fallen. That sounds awesome. So let's talk about that in a second. But what's been the reaction
Sure.
to Peace Child or Peace Hostage?
Pretty good. I I've everyone that's talked to me about it has said they enjoyed it. I was really pleased that not everyone who it's not just you expect as a new writer that most of your audience is going to be like your friends and your family, like, and
Hmm.
I've had people that I don't even know, and like a guy in my Sunday school class came up to me at a party over Christmas and was saying, or Easter, I guess, and was saying how much he enjoyed it, and that means a lot to me. I
Hmm.
don't I'm not trying to change the world. I'm not trying to start a cult or a religion or anything. Like I just want to tell some good stories that
Hmm.
make my sons entertained and my wife, and if more people enjoy it than that, then that makes me really happy. I'm glad. It kind of makes it worth it, all those hours ruining my posture hunched over the keyboard and stuff, like
Yeah.
that's good. And I just hope that I can make people as excited as I used to get when I would read. I'm never going to be as good as David Weber or Neil Asher or people like that, but or Tim Powers. But I can maybe get a shadow of that, and I can make people feel a little bit
Hmm.
of what I used to feel, and just inspired like I was, not just to write, but just to be a better soldier and a better man and a better person. If I can help someone do that, and
Hmm.
especially if it's like one of my boys and it helps them be a good man, then that's all I want, really.
That's a
So it's
win.
been nice.
Yeah.
It's been nice to hear people enjoy it.
That's good. I'm glad. I'm glad about that. Are you part of Raconteur Press's project to like create new books for young men, books for boys? Is that
For
something
sure.
that you're part of? Why is that valuable to you? I mean, obviously you have a son. Um, why does that matter
Well,
to you?
I in some ways I'm still that 13-year-old boy that likes spaceships and people shooting stuff and
100%.
wizards blasting fireballs around. Like we grow up, but we don't really grow up. I think in some ways, and so um, I'm always going to be that kid that was looking through the bookstore or looking through the library or going to the scholastic book fairs and in
Mhm,
grade school that's looking for something that is, I feel like, for me. And I think there's absolutely a place for like romance or for like a a girl nursing a sick horse back to health or whatever. Like I'm. It sounds like I'm sneering at it. I'm not. There's room for every type of story. There's an
mhm,
audience for it. But it seems to me as a dad with
mhm,
young boys growing up and like there's much fewer stories for them than I remember there being. Maybe it's just
mhm,
my perception, but their book fare is very skewed towards like finding yourself or the like sort of not very spicy because it's mid grade, but romance stuff or like
mhm,
falling in love or Babysitter's Club, that kind of stuff. And again, those books do great. They have a huge audience, devoted followings. That's
mhm,
great. That's not what I wanted to read as a kid. I wanted to read about conflict. I wanted to read about war. It's really interesting to me. It always has been to read about struggle and hardship and people
mhm,
overcoming obstacles and adversity. And so that's what I want to read, and that's what I want them to read. I
mhm.
just don't think there's a big like desire for some reason in
Yeah.
traditional publishing to
It's
tell
just
those
not
kind of
happening these
stories
days.
anymore.
Mm,
And I don't think it's a big conspiracy. I'm not one of those people, but I do think it's it's it works the same way as a conspiracy would. I don't think it's conscious. It's
right.
just in effect it's the same thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
where are those little pulp penny dreadful type
Mhm,
just I mean, pulp itself was used as an insult at first, because it
mhm,
was made from cheap paper.
right.
But those books were amazing. Those are the books that became
Mhm,
like American classics. Those are,
mhm.
I mean, The Godfather was a pulp novel at
Oh,
first.
that's hilarious. I didn't know that.
Puzo wrote it as a throwaway, like over a weekend to pay his rent.
Oh
Like
my
he
gosh, really?
died sort of embarrassed that that was his best received book, and it's like the perfect book, and it became
Yeah.
like the perfect movie. We don't
Mhm,
see a lot of those anymore, and
mhm.
so I just want that type of book that's fun, it's immediately engaging, and it doesn't need to be high concept.
Yeah.
Um, and a critic might sneer at it, a literature professor might say, well, that's formula fiction or it's genre or whatever. But I mean, okay,
Wasn't
call me
meant for
lowbrow, but
you.
that's what I like.
Yeah.
So, um, you know,
That's fun.
so yeah,
That's
raconteurs, go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
Well, we're trying to bring that back in some
Yeah, yeah.
ways. We're not trying to change the world. It's just
Mhm,
we want to tell stories that show nobility and struggle and
mhm,
overcoming tough situations, often starring boys that are about the age of our audience.
mhm.
Middle school, early high school, maybe into
Yeah.
into high school, and those are the books that I grew up reading. Those are the books I
Mhm.
love.
Yeah,
Redwall and the Dress the Legend types,
absolutely.
and what inspired me. I truly think that they made me a better leader in the military and a better husband and father. So I kind of want to help my boys do that, and it's completely nakedly selfish. I'm telling stories and
Sure.
producing novels that my boys want to
Right.
read so that they
Yeah.
become better men, and at the same time, all the other little boys maybe that'd be cool. But I'm mostly doing
Yeah.
it for my boys.
Oh, that's amazing. I can respect that. You're talking about the paperbacks, penny dreadfuls and stuff. And I just read on
Hmm.
Substack, I think it was this past week, a point of view that I had never considered. And now, yes, so much more respect for what the paperbacks did and accomplished. Somebody was saying, what was it? It was like, see, I was raised on the classics, and so we basically avoided in my family, we avoided a lot of the paperbacks. So I would sneak out to the library, of course, and then just binge them. And uh, if I have to sort of run everything by my mom, for I could bring it home or run it by my dad, like put all of the sus stuff on the bottom and put all the like the very respectable stuff on the top. And so she like checks the first two, like
Right.
okay, it's probably fine. Um, but that the person was saying something very similar to what you said, which was that. for something to be able to have mass market appeal, it obviously has to have mass market values. And if there's anything we know about mass market, they're interested in the basic good, usually. Okay, there's some sludge in there, but the basic good things about how to live a good life and how to solve problems and what men are supposed to get up to with their lives and their identities and what women want out of life and all of those sorts of things. It's just what the general people want. And none
Yeah.
of that was actually written.
Protect, provide. That's
So you
what you
get
need to do. Yep.
all that common sense. Common sense is not very popular up among the elites.
I think that they think that that's lowbrow. I mean,
Mhm.
in the same way that, you know, I liken it in my mind to someone who's a real expert on like wines. Um,
Lions?
I don't wines, like
Oh,
fine
wines.
wines, like a Bordeaux or a Shiraz, or I've never been one of those guys that can taste it, like a taste a wine and tell you,
The
oh, well,
notes
this
of
was a
the
good
earth. And
vintage,
yeah,
and why, yeah, it has good legs, and can you
yeah,
taste the this or the, I, I just know what I like, and I
yeah.
can't tell you why, and it's not always the greatest. One of the great things about living in Europe is like a $50 bottle here is like 4 or 5 euros there. It's great
Mhm.
wines, but like I couldn't tell you why, and I probably don't like the best stuff. I just like what I like. I feel like it's that way with literature, and I don't think that I don't think that there's a lot of interest in making just filling stuff that people like to drink.
Mhm.
Literarily. Just the kind of run of the mill. It doesn't need to be super nice and fancy. There's absolutely. I mean, I love the classics as well. I
Mhm.
love Dickens and I love Tolstoy and Hemingway and stuff. But like sometimes I just, sometimes you want to watch, Gone with the Wind, and
Yeah.
sometimes you just want to watch Sisu. Sometimes you just want to see a
Yeah.
dude like cut Nazis' heads off. Like
Well, you
that's
need
and
different
I
stories
feel
for
like
different things.
yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we do need stories, not just. I think there's a point at which we can argue classics, they're wonderful for what they are, but they're not good enough for everything. And we need
Right.
stories told today by people who live today. So I'm curious to keep asking you. You've got this other novel on your website, and I'm 90% sure I'm halfway through it already. I am, and it's just fun.
Oh,
Relics of the
cool.
Fallen, and just loved it. So let's talk about that book for a
Good.
minute. What is Tell us a little bit about that one. What is it, and what inspired that one?
I'm a bomb technician by trade. That's how I cut my teeth in the army, and I mean, that was my profession for a long time. I always was fascinated by different countries. You can tell in their ordnance design a lot. To me, a lot about their culture. Um,
I love
certain
the nerdery
countries.
of that. That's so cool.
Well, it is nerdy, I get, but some countries have completely different philosophies to. I'm not going to name names, but certain
Mm,
countries that don't really care about their people that much, they
mm,
just use like human wave tactics. They don't build a lot of safety features into
mm,
their ordnance. Some countries make really great landmines. Some countries make really good howitzer rounds as opposed to mortars or whatever. It's different design philosophies. Some
mhm,
some countries make chemical weapons really well, or whatever. Um, that always fascinated me, and because I'm a science fiction nerd, I also was, consuming sci-fi novels probably like at lunch during bomb tech school. I would probably go out and I know for certain I would go out to my truck and eat my sandwich or whatever and like read a novel while I was doing that. It was probably some science fiction thing. So logically, to me, in my mind, as I was getting more knowledgeable and I was learning the basics of my army job, I also was like reading about aliens and alien cultures and stuff, and it just seemed logical to me that if there are aliens out there, if there are galaxy spanning civilizations out there, they
mhm,
too, you will see in their ordnance, in their military gear, a completely different design philosophy. And what would that look like?
mhm,
And if Earth were an ancient battlefield, say 10,000, 100,000 years ago, sometime in the past,
mhm,
what would the remnants of war that those alien civilizations left here
mhm,
look like?
mhm,
How would it behave? What would its kinetic profile? What would its aerodynamic signature be? How would it function? Would we even be able to figure out its function, really? And so it just occurred to me that maybe all of these mythological, magical, or haunted, or blessed relics throughout history, or places, maybe those are leftover alien landmines and grenades and we don't know what,
Mhm.
like, or a can opener, we don't know, and so that just basically the relics examines, like, how would we, us dumb monkeys, when we find these things, how do we treat them, how do we safe them, how do we study them, how do we research them, and how do we keep them, because they're immensely powerful, some of them, how do we
Mhm.
keep them out of the hands of adversary bad actor nations,
Mhm. Mhm.
so that's Relics of the Fallen.
Amazing. I want to hear more about your, like I said, your obsessions as a child, and then how that teed you up to go become a bomb technician. And yeah, what's your origin story?
I'm an army brat, and when my dad got out of the army, we moved back to Texas, and he's a dentist, so I grew up a little bit in the army, but also most of my youth was after he got out, and so I grew up in Texas, but he was in the reserves. So frequently he would take active orders for a little while, or he'd get activated, and so we'd go over to Europe and visit him there, or whatnot. So we got to do a fair bit of travel,
Okay.
and we also traveled around the states a lot. We had friends that lived in Mexico, so I got down there some. I always I was very lucky to see a wide range of cultures from a very early age.
Mhm.
Um, Different architecture and different landscapes and climates and different cultures, and hearing different languages. I think that's just I, I want to say it should be like mandatory for everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like I feel like my aperture through which I view the world, if you will, is so
Yeah.
much broader
Hmm.
because of those experiences. And so, it's not like we were very wealthy, but my parents did. I mean, they saved a lot, and we went without sometimes so that we would have, enough money to travel, because they felt like that was important, and it was. And me and my sister grew up like kind of citizens of the world a little bit more than your average bear. And so I was always interested in different cultures, and that to me just logically leads into consuming lots of different kinds of literature.
Hmm.
So I read everything. I really like reading science fiction from other countries.
Oh,
Chinese science
interesting.
fiction
Yeah.
is different from Russian science fiction, is different from Chilean or whatever, like is different from American or British science fiction. It's all fascinating to me.
Hmm.
And so, and fantasy and whatever. Like I said, I'll read a little bit of everything. I love westerns. I love the good old potboiler detective stuff, but the stuff that really sparked an interest in me and inspired me was science fiction and fantasy,
Hmm.
because those are the to me, those are the two genres where I could go be a cowboy, I could go be a detective, I could go, ravish a damsel or whatever, like in the modern sense. But like, I'm never going to be a starship captain. It's never going to happen. I
Hmm.
can never do lightning bolts from my hand. Like, so because you can't ever do that, that's, I think, what's fascinating to me about those two little, genres. And so those are what spoke to me a lot. It's a little cheat code way to experience reading in general. Is a little
Hmm.
cheat code to experience whatever that is,
Yeah.
that story is about. But you can never do the stuff in science fiction or fantasy. Most of us will never get to,
Right.
and
Right.
so that's why I gravitated towards it, and
Hmm.
that's why I've written a lot different genres also. But that's what I gravitate towards writing as well.
Hmm. Amazing. Let's talk about your writing habits. What you said it's hard on your back and it's a crushing posture and stuff. And how did you get through, or what was your habits for
That's my
getting
bad
through writing?
habits. I was kind of improvisational writer for a while. When I was coming up in the army, I was always writing something, but it was never very serious. I was writing a superhero story or a fantasy or something like that.
Hmm.
but it was never really for publication. I did publish a few nonfiction articles for professional journals like Army or the Proceedings, the Navy's in-house magazine, that kind of thing, but never fiction. But when I came close to putting in my retirement papers, this was 20, 2022 or so, I figured out, all right, I'm coming up on 20. What do I want to do here? And I thought, yeah, I'll go ahead and get out. And so I thought, well, what am I going to do after with myself so I don't just, become a slob. Um, so I thought, I enjoy writing. I'm my nonfiction is getting, comments, compliments, and my buddy Mike Burke and I, kind of on a whim, entered the Navy's short fiction contest in 2020 and won. We won the whole thing,
Oh, wow.
we sat around afterwards, kind of in shock, and we're like, we might not be terrible at this. Maybe this could be something that we do.
Mhm.
And so we just kind of decided to go for it. I still collaborate with him here and there, but good dude, great dude, retired Marine. But like I said, it was improvisational before, and if I had this thought, like, if I'm going to do this as my profession, my new profession, I need to systematize it.
Mm.
So I started outlining pretty much in a lot of detail. I'm getting more and more detailed the more I iterate. It really helps me. I've never been one of those guys that are like, I don't feel the muse today, or I can't, I don't feel like writing today. Th- this is our job. Like, you can't just tell if you work at a restaurant, you can't tell your boss, I don't feel like bussing tables today. No, he's going to fire you. This is your job. But there are times when I don't feel like it, and an outline keeps me on task.
Mhm.
Um, if I've drawn the outlines and numbered the picture, I know what paint should go where. I just have to paint.
Mhm.
And so privately, that's what I call it. I call it painting by numbers. The more detailed an outline, the easier it is for me to write when I don't really feel like it. And also the more quickly it goes. I've gotten it down to where I can write a novel sized, a good sized novel, 80 or 90,000 words in about 4 months,
Okay. Wow.
which is really fast for some people.
Hmm.
I'd like to get it. I'd like to get it down to about 3 months. That's what I'm trying to do. Um, but I sit down, I kind of brainstorm with my wife or with Burke, or somebody, and decide kind of the major themes. I talk about my ideas for a character or a setting, and then as my collaborator Mike will always ask me, okay, that's a good setting, that's an interesting character, but what's the point? What happens? What crisis does he need to or she need to overcome? What happens to him, or what decision does he make to overcome it? And because that's what a story is. It's not just a list of stuff that happens in a certain order. It might be a cool setting, but a cool setting does not a story make.
Hmm.
So then we figure that out between my wife and I, or whoever I'm brainstorming with, and then I sit down and outline it. I might make a character sheet or two, I'm such a nerd, like Dungeons and Dragons style character sheet,
Hmm.
to keep my I's dotted and my T's crossed, and so I don't contradict myself about the character later on. And then if it's a new setting, like a short little world Bible, um, and then I just put that down and think about it for a few days, and then I'm off to the races. And I try to write about 1,000 words a day, and you do that math, that's about 3 months, right?
Hmm.
So brainstorm an outline for a couple of weeks, think about it for a few weeks, go on long, boring walks, and just look up at the sky and stuff and think, and then sit down, force yourself to sit down and bang out about 1,000 a day. You're not always going to make 1,000. Sometimes you're going to just not feel it, or sometimes your dog gets sick or something and you just don't make it that day. And sometimes you just really feel it, and
Hmm.
you're feeling froggy and you write like 3,000. I know there's guys
Wow.
that can bang out like 10,000 words a day. I can do that, but I don't want to do anything for the next few days. It drains
Sure.
me. I can do
Yeah.
about 1,000, and
Hmm.
then I know I can also do that again the next day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my thing. And then at the end, like I said earlier, I just put it in a drawer. It's not a physical copy yet, so I send it to myself on Gmail, so I have a draft saved, and then I just don't even think about it. I actively try not to think about it for a few weeks. I go
Hmm.
work on something else, a short story, or I'm not as big a gamer as I used to be, but I'll take a break maybe for a couple of weeks and play a video game that caught my eye or
Nice.
something, and then I get back into it, and by then usually my wife and maybe one more person, like an alpha reader type, has given me their thoughts.
Hmm.
And then I sit down with their comments. I do print those out and I sit them next to me here. And I have my original draft on this screen that I'm looking at, and on that screen I have the new copy, and I do a complete rewrite from blank page. And I just look at what I've written. I look at their comments if they have made it on this sentence or that section, or oh, I wouldn't use that word there, or did you mean that? And then it's a blank page rewrite, and then that's my first draft is that rewrite, and
How
then I give it
fascinating.
to
So why do you do
yeah.
that as opposed to just editing?
I
As
I
opposed.
did that. I
Okay.
have done that. I feel like it makes it stronger.
Okay.
It sounds stupid. It sounds superstitious.
No, I'm just
Like you have
fascinated
to,
at the sort of
but
mental, yeah, the process, but also there's a level of you're re-engaging with something like all over
yeah,
again in a new
you
way.
have to recreate, or I have to recreate it because if I go back in and I'm just tweaking a word here, or oh, my wife didn't like how that sentence reads, maybe move that phrase for or whatever. It feels like I am too married to it if I just use the draft I've already done. Like, I don't want to change
Interesting.
that.
Wow.
I'm
Okay.
no, I like it how it looks, and really it's me being lazy. I don't want to do the work.
Okay.
But if I'm already typing every single letter again,
Okay.
it's easier for me mentally somehow to go, yeah, okay, I'll make that change. Yes, I'll
Okay.
move that scene over here because it does make it. He's right. It does make that flow better. So somehow it's easier for me. I
Yeah.
don't know. But
When
then
you're
that is the draft
rewriting,
that I give. Yeah.
sorry, okay, so you say that's the draft that you give. Okay. When you're
Yep.
rewriting something from scratch like that, do you how different is the new version compared to the older version? It sounds like it would give you an opportunity to um re-engage with the description or with how a character presents stuff. You're now taking a whole new pass at the experience of a
Yeah.
scene and so on. How different are they when you evaluate your alpha version versus your beta version?
Not super different. It's not like I mean, I might change a minor character's name here or there. I In Relics, I had two different characters, four, I guess, if total. I had two sets of characters with the same name
Okay.
because I based that team on my team at the
Okay.
Defense Threat Reduction Agency. I was chief of a counter weapons of mass destruction team. That team changed the names and some of the characteristics to protect the guilty, but like that's my team.
Wow.
That was my
Okay.
team in Stuttgart. Like those are my guys. And
Hmm.
in real life, I had two sets of guys with the same name.
Okay.
And someone pointed out to me like that's so confusing to the reader. You understand that, right? And I was like, but it's based on my. And they were like, you don't have to keep them the same. And I was like, you know what? That's right. I don't. So, but other than that, I don't change a ton of it.
Okay.
I just might, if someone points out like this thing seems uncharacteristic for this
Mm.
character,
Hmm.
or I make a decision. Like I said, I do an outline, but I'm not married to it.
Hmm.
I'll innovate a little bit. I'll freestyle it a little bit as I'm going. If in the
Hmm.
moment as I'm writing that first ugly draft, I go, maybe I make her a redhead instead. And that keeps me doing it again. Doing that from a blank page rewrite. That
Hmm.
also helps me see like, oh, I call her a brunette the first time.
Mm.
I need to fix that. So it's not
Okay.
wildly different.
Okay.
It's just little things.
And so that's fascinating. So it's like a mental state or a mental trick to give yourself permission to like you say, not be married to a thing and just
I
and
can
have
break anything
fresh
I
eyes
want.
and
Yeah.
That's such a cool way
It
to
feels
go.
less like I'm breaking it and more
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm fixing it, you know? So
That's so interesting. Well, we got a comment here. Somebody, while watching this, was intrigued by your book, Peace Child. They went and bought a copy on Amazon. So you just made another sale.
awesome. Thank you. Hope you enjoy. I
Nick,
really
it was
like the
so
art in
cool.
there too.
Yeah,
So check that out.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Where can folk find you online, Nick, and continue to buy copies of your books?
Sure. So my website is just my full name, nicknethery.com, all one word. I have a Twitter account where I post about ridiculous garbage like my plate of nachos that I had that day, and that is at Nick Nethery Bro, all one word. I also have a Substack where yeah, you can find like new stuff I have about to publish, but I also talk about like I do movie reviews sometimes. I'm working through, westerns with my boys, and I write about that a little bit. And that is, so just random stuff I think about. That is nicknethery.substack.com. It's called Nick's Cool Substack for Attractive People. So you guys should all go check that out. And
Right.
then the Raconteur Press Substack also, which I think is
Mhm.
raconteurpress.substack.com. I'll write for I'll write something for them periodically. If I'm editing one of their anthologies soon, I'll write a little homework post like here's what inspired this anthology, so here's kind of what you need to, if you
Mhm.
want, here's a movie or a book or whatever that kind of inspired it. Check that out. And their open calls are on there. Our stuff that we have publishing soon, and again, just random silly Western songs about spaceships that we make up or whatever. Like so, just fun stuff like that.
Yeah. You guys always seem to have an incredible time. Just a ton of fun all the
It's a
time.
good crew. It's a really
It
good crew.
is.
I'm
It
thankful
really
that I
is.
fell in with them.
Amazing. Well, closing question for you. If you had like a minute to give a piece of advice to other authors who are kind of looking at the success that you've created for yourself, and the fact that you've finished and shipped a book or a couple of books. How many books have you written, by the way?
Full novels two so far.
Okay. Okay.
Working on the sequel for Peace Child, and I'm also writing a boys' adventure book at the moment.
Oh
So
wow. Okay. So what advice would you
more
give
to come.
to encourage other authors, especially since this channel is for authors who are interested in starting and finishing their novels? Um, yeah, what would you leave with them?
Sure. There's no one right way to do this. And it feels very strongly sometimes like you're being gate kept. It feels like people are trying to keep you out. They're not. It's just there's not one way to do this, and your way might not be the same as that well-known writer who's giving you advice. He's not trying to sabotage you. I mean, it's not impossible, but I guarantee you, 99% of the time, nobody's trying to gatekeep you. It it's just not everybody. This is such a weird industry in some ways.
Mhm.
The way that everybody else did it is unique to them. Hemingway, Judy Blume, Cheryl Silverstein, Stephen King, they all did this their own unique way. There's no one way to do it. You just have to keep doing it. And it feels like it takes a long time, and it feels like you are being kept out. You just have to keep trying. You have to be comfortable with being told no. You have to be comfortable with rejection, and it stings a lot, especially for like a kind of a cringy introvert like me, like that gets my feelings hurt a lot. That's rough. It stings, but you have to fight through it, and you have to keep writing. You have to keep writing. Uh, you can't. I think you have to enjoy the process. A lot of people enjoy having written.
Mm.
I think fewer people enjoy writing.
Mhm.
You have to enjoy it, um, and there's no secret to that except write something that you want to read. Don't write to market. Don't write what you think an audience wants. Write what you want to read, because there's a great scene in Orange County with Kevin Kline's character, the literature prof, is talking to Colin Hanks, this kid
Mhm.
that's trying to get into Stanford's literature program. And he says, I can tell you love your characters. That always has stuck with me. Readers can smell it. When you are having fun writing it, it just makes it better. Readers can smell it somehow. So write something that you enjoy. That's all.
I think that's an awesome place to wrap. Nick, thanks so much for coming on today and hanging out with us. And
Thank you. Thanks for
walking
having
us
me.
through your adventures.
It's been a blast. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, look, here's what I'll do is I will clip out this conversation. I'll post it on the channel over this next week, and I'll shoot you the link so that hopefully you can have that to have and to share, and it'll continue helping you to promote your books.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been fun. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Catch you soon. I'd love to have you come back on the show sometime.
Sure, I'd love to do that. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Cheers. Thanks, Nick. Thanks everyone
Take
in the
care.
chat, especially Victor. I know that you're hanging out in the chat, dropping those awesome comments. And kudos to you for purchasing a copy of the book. So let's see. Thank you, Nick. I will catch you next time. Bounce you from
All right,
the
I'll go ahead. I'll
live
go ahead and
stream.
bounce, man. Thank you.
You're good. Catch you later, sir.
All right, bye.
Cheers. And for the last couple of minutes, what I thought I'd do is I've got a whole stack of tools that I've created over. So I borrowed some of the fantastic help of ChatGPT, right? And put it all together on a page on my website. And what was funny was I was chatting with a friend not too recently, like, oh my goodness, a couple of months back. And I shared with him the fact that I created this tool. And what was so funny was the fact that his eyes lit up and he realized, whoa, I have never thought about how um, structuring a character or a story could actually work this way. So let me share with you what I've put together. And we're just going to have a little walk through this tool, and maybe it'll be helpful for you in the stories that you are creating. So, okay, here's the page on the Legend Fiction website. If you go under more, you'll see generative AI, and I've just put together statements of what we think about AI as it's continuing to evolve. As you can see, we're pro artists and pro AI, and we're anti slop from artists and AI. It's basically that simple. Um, so let me scroll down. I'm trying to keep punching through the different tools that I've created because there's a bunch of little interesting thoughts that have gone into them. Okay, the one that really struck me. Hold on, which was it? Hold on, Thimble. Yes, pretty sure it's Thimble. Let me pull this up here. And I'm going to screen share what it is. So understand your character better to earn your emotional ending. Now, here's why this is interesting. I'm going to go over to ChatGPT and we'll share this here. Here's why this is interesting, okay? When it comes to creating a character, you're taking a character on a journey or on an adventure. And have you ever had that feeling where a character gets to the end, or you're writing a character towards the end, and you want them to earn their ending, okay? You want the ending to land to feel believable. I have had no idea how to do this for like the longest time. And it felt like, okay, I need to figure out how to do this. Well, turns out there was a movie that I watched that by the time it was over, the main character had earned their ending. And it was so powerful. That movie was so powerful. I had to like kind of stop for a minute and just wonder what magic was just worked on my life right now. Why was it so powerful? And it turns out that there were three beats, three moments that had happened in this story to set up the ending. And it was interesting to then go back over and deconstruct what did the author do that made this ending so powerful. Here's my working theory. And I've gone and tested it a couple of times, and we can try testing it in a minute. Here's my working theory. If you want a character to end up somewhere, let's say to climb a mountain, they literally have to climb 1, 2, 3 steps to be able to get to the top of the stairs, right? 1 hill, 2 hill, 3 hill to get to the top. That's basically how a story works. So, but these are emotional beats. We're not just talking about adventure moments or chases. Often when you're creating a story, these things can happen right around the same time. So this can be like a little bit of a subplot. Let's say you want your main character to go from being a spoiled brat to being a responsible hero. Okay. How do you make that transition? And you could probably guess and you could fudge your way through it and sort of, well, let's put him in this situation. Let's put him in this situation. Let's make him figure this out. It's like, okay, for me, I want to have a system that makes it easier to think through that kind of progress. And if you have no idea how to do it, well, that's kind of why chat can be fantastic because it can help you quickly get some ideas to understand what happens. Now, the difficulty with this is we're talking about psychological, spiritual, soul based, mind based um, levels of progress. And if you've never put like been able to slow down and put time on, like you can't take your character and just put him on a therapist chair and go, how did you get to that internal decision to become this kind of a wonderful person that we all know and love? um, it takes a long time to sort of unpick the experiences that character went through, the building blocks that were stacked so that they could reach this level of enlightenment or awareness or awakening or whatever. So, uh, for example, I've got a character in one novel, and by the end, I don't know if I'll still stick to it, but here's the working theory. He absolutely loves dinosaurs, and maybe he doesn't like people. But then at the end, I think he needs to kill the one T-Rex or the one dinosaur that he spent the whole book trying to protect because it's the apex predator that stabilizes the whole system. He needs to kill that thing. It's a bit of a murder your darling sort of story. And he has to do it probably to save someone. Now, I'm not sure if it's going to be a girlfriend character or if it's just somebody he even doesn't like, but he has to transition from being someone who prefers animals more than people to recognizing people have a greater dignity than animals when it comes into the balance of these things. I have no idea where the story goes, but this is kind of what I'm messing with. So I'm now trying to think, how do I make that transition? Because that's a night and that's a 180-degree kind of change. That's a big difference for you to murder your darling. It's a big deal. Well, you got to lay some foundations first, and they have to be believable. Well, how do you do that? Here's my working theory, and here's what I'm thinking. If you identify, here's the end goal that I need to get to, that usually can be broken down into three seemingly unrelated or fuzzy ideas. And I'm going to go back to the movie that impacted me. It's called When a Monster Calls. And it's a story about a boy whose mother is passing away from cancer. And he is locked and he is stuck inside himself. And nobody can sort of get to him. His dad can't get to him. And I don't even know. I can't remember the other people in his life. I think it's been 2 years now, 3 years since I've seen this. Excuse me. And this figure, this monster of a being kind of walks down off the hill and helps him enter through three distinct stories, enter into the experience of what he's doing to help him make progress through this interior landscape so that his emotions can be teed up and his mindset can be changed so that he can be ready to accept the final lesson, the final boss inside his soul is to accept the impossible truth that he has to let go. And that as mad as he is, he's mad because he can't control, he can't stop this thing from happening. And it's the worst thing. And because of this horrible situation, when we are introduced to him as the main character, he is stuck. So he has to go on a journey. And that's kind of the point of the whole story. The adventures and the stories that he goes through are thawing him or processing him through three seemingly unrelated ideas. But when you put all three together, they give you the capacity to understand how to make the decision that the end requires. So that's the meta level theory. And here's, if I can remember, here's how it's applied in the story. The first story that he is told by this monster being, and we're walked through the experience of this story of a bunch of seemingly random things that happen, if I can remember right. And the story ends with something feeling incredibly unjust and unfair. And he gets mad at that and he rankles with that. And then the advice, the learning lesson from that is yes, sometimes stuff happens that is unwanted, that is unexpected. And that's sort of one truth, core truth that has to be implanted. It's like core memories, right? And so then what is the second one? I think the second one is that sometimes really bad things happen from perhaps good people, from places you don't expect. And he has to learn to process that anger and accept the fact that, yes, it is unjust things can happen and stories can take weird and unexpected twists. And then bad things can come from seemingly good people. And that changes your whole opinion of something. And so that's kind of a meta level idea of sometimes reality can seem to be good, but then bad things can happen, and you have to change you either have to detach from it, or learn to let it go, or learn to see it for what it is, or change your point of view of a thing. That's like a second core memory. Um, I'm actually struggling to remember the third one, but there was a third moment in the story, and it could have been his ability to fight back and to actually take all of that confusion, the injustice, and the anger, and then embody it and stop being bullied by people and learn to fight back against them. that's in an embodied way. He has to learn to push back against negative things that are happening to him. You take those 3 lessons, things are unjust, unexpected things can happen, and you still need to maybe push back on the world or something, right? Those 3 things gives him scaffolding, gives him confidence that he can handle the final decision when he faces up to it, which is, I don't want her to go. I don't want to lose her. But there's nothing that he can do to stop it. And so inside that messy ball of like emotions and feelings, these 3 little stepping stones give him a believable ability to finally look at his mom and have that experience, that final conversation with her, and let her go, and 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 start to grow up. Right? So that right there just so fascinated me, and I am interested to see if this is something that can be helpful to you as well. So here's what I did: is I created, like I said, this tool. It's called Thimble so far. It's on ChatGPT. It's totally available for free. You can go hit the link and go check it out. So you're going to guide characters to map um, a character's inner growth. Hold on, let me change my thing here. Uh, Guide a character's inner growth through what's going to try to do precise emotional logic. So what you'll do is you'll describe, here's the intended outcome that I want for my character, and then it's going to try to work backwards and give you building blocks. They may not be very good. They may not be helpful. That might surprise you and help you realize, oh, these are stepping stones that I didn't even realize my character might need to internally go through. Um, and it might help you with the character arc that you're trying to take your character on. Now, there are some characters who don't need character arcs at all. For example, I don't know, Indiana Jones maybe, or most superheroes. They're just there to be the one kind of person who reacts the same way to all problems and saves the world. That's one kind of character. If you're trying to tell the kind of emotional arc, a tool like this, if you're trying to think through, or you just want new ideas, because the nice thing is, as soon as you get these 3 stepping stones, you're like, oh my gosh, my story would just make so much more sense immediately. So why don't we give this a try? I've preloaded it with a couple of little ideas that you can just tap one and see what it does. But for example, if I say, for example, right in here, let me describe that character that I was talking about. So it was like, my character loves dinosaurs and hates people. By the end of the story, he has to learn, let's say, how to appreciate. I'll let chat handle the typos. How to appreciate the value of a human life, maybe, and he must put down his, let's say, his favorite T Rex. It's like I said earlier, murder your darlings sort of theme. I don't yet understand how he can transition from one emotional and mental state to the other where he can make this decision, believably. Now, what's again, believably, always so cool with chat is that you can just straight up talk. Now, chat's going to do what chat does and talk like chat does and stuff. So, it's got some prompts in here to start asking a little more question. What specifically does he hate about people? What is the experience that made him decide people aren't worth caring about? That's a good question that I have not slowed down to think about at all. So let's just make up something. Maybe he has been betrayed by someone he trusted. And so I don't know. It was traumatizing in his earlier life, maybe, or traumatizing with a Z. In his earlier life, animals will always be themselves and never duplicitous. That's interesting as I'm typing this out. For example, I can immediately see, well, that means he needs a character in the story who is duplicitous, who will trigger him and remind him of his wound, but then he'll probably also need somebody in his life who is honest and clear the whole way so that he has those 2 to bounce off of. Okay, so that helps. He's not just avoiding people, he believes they're fundamentally unsafe. The final assumption you gave us a few hidden assumptions. Human life has value even when it hurts you. Love isn't just about safety or loyalty. Choosing what's right can mean losing what you love most. So he can't jump there. He has to be broken apart in 3 different ways. I don't know what these pictures are about. First, in the body, trust gets rebuilt through risk and not safety. So this is interesting. If I stay close to something predictable, I won't get hurt. So you put him in a situation where a human is physically unreliable, but it shows up. Hogarth trusts a dangerous being and the giant chooses not to harm him. So that's interesting. I can imagine with this staring down a T-Rex. Okay. Um, that's interesting. A human fails him in some way, so lies, hesitates, or screws up, but then chooses him anyway when it matters physically. That breaks his idea that unpredictable equals worthless. Instantly given a scene like, okay, he needs to be in danger, and the person that he trusts least shows up for him and says, of course I would do that for you because this connection between us supersedes the fact that we dislike each other. Like, we're out here on the frontier trying to take care of dinosaurs. We all have to take care of each other. Um, and so that might change. That would open up something in him to allow him to go, okay, maybe life is more complex than the simple white and black that I thought it was. That's actually really interesting. That instantly creates an early scene in the early part of the book. And that gives some meaning to his characterization. Okay. Then part number 2, love that isn't clean or easy. So he believes real connection, should feel safe and pure, maybe like animals. So give him a bond that is messy, frustrating, and meaningful. So like Toothless. Toothless is all over the place. His character needs this twist. Maybe his T-Rex does something that hurts someone innocent. It's just instinct. And so that reminds him that at the same time, the human he's been resisting shows care that costs him something emotionally. So that cracks the belief animals are good, humans are bad. So there you go. Maybe something happens what if an animal is trained badly? What if for example, the T-Rex or the animals he's taking care of have been conditioned to react in a way that is not normal for them or that is dangerous? And then that could open up in him a realization or just sort of a reminder, maybe I'm being too simple minded about this because this can also happen for people. What if good people can be trained to act wrong? And so if I was betrayed, maybe there's something deeper going on. And so I had a snap judgment as a kid and as an adult. I might need to change that a little bit. So that's something to sit with, if we're talking about his internal growth. And then lastly, in his spirit, choosing responsibility over attachment. So showing up for somebody else or something else that calls for more mature response. So let's say he believes if I love something, I protect it, no matter what. Keeping the T-Rex alive will cost human lives. Something very, very specific. Um, I haven't seen Of Mice and Men. Maybe you have. George doesn't stop loving Glennie. That's why the choice hurts. So the character must realize love isn't proven by holding on. Sometimes it's proven by taking responsibility for what your love causes. Oh, that's so interesting. So that's where he earns the final act, not because he values humans more than the T-Rex, but because he fully understands value isn't about comfort or loyalty, it's about consequence. Again, chat doing what chat does. It could be fluff in there, but it does give us something interesting to think about. If he's going to get to the end, it's a bit like Old Yeller or the Yearling. Um, Sometimes you need to become the dangerous thing to stop something worse from happening. And you might feel that you now are becoming the traitor. Let's say you stared that T-Rex down at the beginning of the book and promised, I'm never going to let something bad happen to you, for example. But then what if over the course of the book, that T-Rex is being routinely conditioned by poachers to act in unnatural ways or violent ways and start targeting people? Maybe I'm just rewriting the Yearling with a T-Rex. I never realized this. Um, Now he has to make the final hard decision. That's so interesting. I never considered this. So there you go. In 5 minutes, my story's gone in a direction I never expected. I thought it was going to be more like, I don't know, The Creator or Elysium. And here we go. It's the Yearling in space with dinosaurs or something. So there you go. And if this doesn't work for you, you could just say, no, that doesn't work. Try again. Or I don't want this, or this isn't landing, or it's not clear, or I don't understand. So again, you can head over to legendfiction.com/AI and you can tap Thimble. It's open for free. You can check it out. If it's helpful for you, I would love to know. Drop a comment, for example, either under this video or if this is on my Substack blog, drop a comment there. And tell me what you think. And if it brought you some clarity or some help with your own book, um, come let us know. And if you got suggestions for how I can make the tool better, let me know, and I can share that, you know, tweak the prompt. I'm happy to share the prompt with anybody who wants it. You can go stick it in your own project folder in Claude or in chat, and you can own that, and I don't really mind at all. So, there you go. All right, friends, thanks so much for hanging around. This has been a fun live stream. I'll clip out these sections afterwards and we'll post them. But till next time, if you've got any questions, say hi in the comments. It was fun to hang out with you. Let me know if there's anything that I can be helpful with. I'm still trying to figure out how to do this whole YouTube thing. If you want to support the channel and not join the writing community because it's just not your speed, we do have a membership thing, and I am very interested to be able to have special members only live streams. So if you send me like a private question, and if you're a paying member at like the $5 a month, what is it? I think it's like $4.99 or $5.99 member. I'll get better at that. You can drop that special comment, and I can make that special members only live stream just for you. Till next time, may the lore be with you. Check out legendhaven.com. You got to come to the con. It's happening on May 2nd and 3rd. And I'd love to see you there. And if you're a storyteller, come bring your story. Come hang out with people. If you're a reader and a fan, come and hang out with us and be a part of the story, be a part of the action. Keep writing.